Throughout this module, we are taking a look at the American West. And one of the things I want to highlight is that the American West had many aspects to it. It had many layers to it. One of the first things to take a look at is the people groups who are going to end up inhabiting the West. We obviously have those that already live there, the Native American tribes. Some of those tribes lived peacefully and some of them fought against one another. When American frontiers people and then wagon trains began to appear, some would interact peacefully with the American men and women, and some would fight with them. And so you have various complex aspects to the encounters that went on there. The other thing is the Mexican population that had once resided in the Southwest. They had resided there when Mexico was part of America. But when America won the Southwest from the Mexican War, then we are going to see a merging of cultures begin to take place in the Southwest. Cultures that will incorporate various Hispanic as well as Native American aspects. And this is going to shape also the people groups that are moving out west and that will live in the West. We also have a pretty significant immigration coming in from China. This immigration had been coming in for a little while in the 1870s and 1880s, and Chinese men and women are going to fill up parts of the frontier. They will especially be active in the railroad expansion. In some situations, they will be abused with the expansion of the railroad, as well as with the policies that were put in place by railroad companies and by the government using Chinese men to lay the groundwork there. We also have Americans moving out west with the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act was passed in 1865, and it is going to promise 160 acres of land to any American who moves out west and settles the land for 5 years, which means you had to grow basically some crops on it. You settled it for 5 years and the land became yours. And so this is going to not only draw Americans who live on the eastern section of the nation out west, but it's also going to draw in immigrants that are coming in from Europe, for example. In this period, it's really important to note that land, especially in Europe, meant wealth. And so immigrants coming in, moving out west was a means for them to start afresh, start new, and gain some wealth. And so, one of the things we're going to begin to see happen out west is the discovery of gold and the discovery of silver. And this is going to lead to the establishment of mining towns, and they're going to begin to spring up in various parts out west. And as these mining towns spring up, we will begin to watch populations flood into those areas, and we will watch the mine become this industrialized kind of mining situation there that is going to employ a large number of the inhabitants of the town. The issue becomes when the mine dries up from whatever is there, then the people will begin to move away, leaving behind what famously becomes known as a ghost town. Other groups that are out west will be the establishment, the creation of the cowboys. You'll be watching a little bit of a video on that. One thing to note about that is that there was also a significant number of African American cowboys. These were men who, after slavery ended in the South, moved out west to start over. And some of them were also part of what was known as the Buffalo Soldiers, who also were involved in various aspects of the American Army. Mormons are another population that will move out west. They are going to move out west because they're being persecuted. They will help settle Utah. And we also are going to have farming begin to become established, especially in the plains. And this is going to lead to the development of agribusiness in the West as well. Now, one of the things to note is that there will be conflict, obviously, between the American government and the Native American tribes that live out west. In some situations, there will be a treaty that will be established for land in exchange for some type of monetary return between the federal government and the Indians that live there. In other situations, these treaties will be more of a mock treaty, almost a false kind of treaty, and so it is going to lead to the detriment of a number of Native American tribes. And so one of the things that develops is the creation of the reservation. The reservation becomes these cordoned off areas of land where tribes will be put to live as Americans move out west and as the federal government helps bring states in that are being created out west. This is going to lead to conflict between native tribes and between the American government. One of the most famous showdowns was the Battle of Little Bighorn. You also will watch a little clip about that as well. And this is going to build that kind of animosity between the American government, the American soldier, and the Native Americans. There were a couple of Native Americans who are going to rise to the top in terms of prominence, and one of those was Geronimo. Geronimo became quite famous. He was an Apache Indian and he was a leader within the Apache tribe. And he became quite famous not only for his fighting skills against Americans and against the American government, but also for his ability to continue to escape. And he will escape over and over again until he is finally captured by the government and will be put on a reservation. We also will have violence that will spring up from time to time in the West as individuals vie for power within a town. And we will have a few what we call gunfights that will happen. You'll be watching a little video on that as well. So the West really kind of helped shape parts of American history. It had so many different layers to it. The moving out west was quite dangerous. There was no guarantee that you would make it or be able to settle or be able to live beyond a certain period of time. But the lure of the West is what continued to pull people out west. The ideas of the adventure, the romance, kind of that was created by the images and paintings of Western landscapes and the Grand Canyon and the Western deserts, and these being on display to the Eastern coast is going to create this kind of romantic vision of the West that is also going to draw people out west. We also will see in the Eastern section, especially, the creation of the Wild West show. The Wild West shows began to spring up and they became reenactments of battles that happened between Americans and Native Americans. The Wild West shows showed off cowboy skills as they watch cowboys lasso cattle down. The Wild West shows showcased sharpshooters. Annie Oakley became one of the most famous sharpshooters in this period. That also created this image of moving out west for Americans. And so all of these things kind of layering together are going to help shape the desire to move out west and then also shape the American history.